Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Big Sky Now podcast. As always, I am your host, Josh Amick, and I have my esteemed panel with me, Fritz, John, Mark, and Ian. A lot to go over this week, as last week's games were very exciting. A lot of games within one score. So we're going to jump right into probably the biggest shock over the weekend, Montana losing to Weber State. It was 55-48 with Weber State pulling it off on the road in Montana. Fritz, I got a question for you. Is Montana going to figure it out, or is this their defense? Is this who they are?
I kind of think this is who they are. I mean, they've given up. I just updated the standings. They've given up 103 points in two league games. I know Saturday's game was in overtime. I was a little surprised, but early on, Weber really punched him in the mouth, 28-10, and they look good. They looked speedy. The running backs look great. Their quarterback's a load to bring down. And, I just kind of last year's team that made it to the FCA's title game had a really good defense. And a lot of those guys graduated. Braxton Hill was a really good tackler. I think everybody who watched that game saw a lot of missed tackles on Saturday. They're missing Janet Carroll. Corbin Walker's gone. Cale Edwards transferred out. All those guys would have helped. Alex Gubner was player of the year. So now you've got, Montana has an unending supply of in-state recruits to play safety and linebacker, but there's a little bit of a speed deficit that I saw, and they're just not very sure tacklers right now. I think that can change as the season goes on. But, I think it's going to be a tough hill.
Yeah, I saw pretty much exactly what Fritz was saying. The defense is struggling. If you look at the last two games, both of them, it's short passes, it's runs that are torching Montana, but then it's also they're getting beat over the top, and they got Ryder Meyer back this last weekend. You thought that might help out the secondary, and two deep shots of 50 yards or more for touchdowns from Weber State. So, credit to the Wildcats. They came in and, like Western Carolina did, they punched Montana early, and they ended up pulling it out in the end. Montana is now given up 32 points per game is what I was seeing. If you take out the Morehead State game against the non-scholarship team, they're giving up 38 points a game. So that's, I think, like 93rd in the FCS. It's not good for the Grizz defense. The offense is holding up their part. They just, they got to start early. They got to get points on the board early if the defense is going to be giving up this many points.
Yeah, the thing that really stuck out to me is just teams kind of being able to move the ball in different ways against Montana over the last couple of weeks. Just kind of looking back against North Dakota, it was around 250 yards for North Dakota on the ground. Against Eastern, it was around 250 yards on the ground and then almost 300 in the air. Against Western Carolina, it's almost 400 through the air and then around 350 this week against Weber State. So that's kind of the big thing that really jumped out to me is it's not really just like one position group or one facet of the game where teams are really kind of exploiting them. It's really kind of everywhere on the defense. And like John mentioned, a lot of big plays, explosive plays that have been going against them.
Yeah, Weber's got a pretty good, Richie Munoz is a really good quarterback, and they got some other pretty good guys, but you wouldn't expect them to be the team that, hangs 48 on somebody in regulation. And so if they can do it, imagine, what a really potent offense would do. I guess the only thing the thing about the Big Sky this year, it's not a lot of really high powered offenses. Idaho's offense isn't that powerful. Montana State's is. You look at Davis, they're pretty good. But other than that, they might be able to get away with kind of a weaker defense, at least until the playoffs. If they get in the playoffs.
Yeah, we're going to find out over these next couple of weeks for sure. Moving on, Portland State almost pulled off their upset, getting their first win of the season against UC Davis. It took a 94-yard drive, under 2 minutes for UC Davis to come out victorious. John, do you think the Vikings should be encouraged by this performance, or UC Davis should be a little more worried about how they performed?
I think both of these things can be true at the same time. I think the Vikings should definitely be encouraged to, hang in with a ranked team, a team that just took down Idaho the week before. But that's where I think that Davis should they should feel a little bit concerned, but at the same time, not, because they did just beat Idaho. But it's that hangover game that you get when you play a top opponent team. You go into the next game, you have that letdown sometimes, and I think Davis hit it big time this week. But it's one of those games that Davis needs to look back on and be thankful that they won come playoff selection time, because if they drop that one again, you're in that same boat that you're in last year, looking on the outside in potentially.
John mentioned UC Davis needs to be thankful. They need to be thankful that that call was ruled a touchdown on the field, because it definitely looked like Tompkins was a bit short on that catch on the goal line. It's just a really tough loss for Portland State. Kind of gut-wrenching. Like, there's some positive things to take away from that, sure, but at the end of the day, they did have the ball in like the UC Davis like 2 or 3 yard line with about 6 minutes left in the game and couldn't get in the end zone. That really would have been like a real solid blow for them to end up potentially taking the win, but had to settle for that field goal. And then the Aggies are able to go on that long drive. But sure, definitely positive takeaways from it. I think it definitely kind of says more about UC Davis, though, at the end of the day.
Yeah, it was kind of like you guys said, kind of shaping up to be a potential upset. You had UC Davis, patting themselves on the back after beating Idaho, and Portland State playing at their home away from home. So it was kind of, gave an inspired effort. I think UC Davis is a good team, not a great team. I think they're, the fact that they just about, they probably should have lost that game. I don't know. On that last play, the only angle I saw was like from the 50-yard line camera. So I don't know if anybody saw one on the goal line. It looked like close enough, but I mean, the ref was right there. You hope he got it right. I mean, that's a big call. That's a win or lose call. So you hope he got it right.
Yeah, well, not only that not only was there like a 4-minute review before they upheld the touchdown, they'd thrown incomplete the down before, and the clock had run out, and then they put a second back on and gave him one more try. So, yeah, you credit Portland State for working back from being down 35-7, and then like Ian said, teams that aren't winning have a harder time finding ways to win, and not punching that touchdown in gave Davis the chance it needed. I guess they wound up with maybe one extra chance that they really needed to pull off the win. I kind of agree with Mark, and Ian. It wasn't a real convincing win for Davis, but they all count. Miles Hastings threw for 424 when it was all said and done, and got him a good clock drive at the end. And I don't know, this big guy's kind of reminded me back when I was a much younger man. Everybody's throwing for 300, 400 yards every week, and not a lot of defense. And I don't mind it too much.
Well, whether that was a touchdown or not, whatever angle you guys got, we are appreciative of the call because we all had UC Davis to win. So probably would have took a hit to our picks if it did not go our way. But moving on to another great game, Idaho State pulled off the 3-point victory over Cal Poly. What stood out to you in this game, Mark, for either the Bengals or the Mustangs?
I don't know. I guess going in, it's two teams kind of on that next tier down, trying to make their way up, and have the other teams take them seriously. And so we kind of figured it would be a nail biter, and it turned out to be. And Idaho State won it at the end. Good win for ISU to win on the road. Any road win in that league is a good win. Now the question is, okay, now can they keep it up and maybe win games they're supposed to win and stuff like that. So, we'll see. They're both kind of at that level, trying to get their way up, and that's kind of how that game turned out.
I hope you took the over in that game. That was a fun one, fun back and forth game to watch. Cal Poly must have watched the last episode of the podcast where I said they wouldn't really be able to run the ball, or I didn't think they'd be able to run the ball because they went out and really proved me wrong. They ran for 295 yards and averaged almost 6 or a little over 6 yards carry. Still kind of towards the bottom of Big Sky rushing yards per game totals, but if they can keep that up, they'll definitely lead to some more wins in the future.
I I didn't know. That's the one game I kind of got through on ESPN Plus, and one example is Cal Poly had its first pick six since 2021, which also came against Idaho State. And speaking of officials' calls, there was a play at the end of the first half where one of Cal Poly's three quarterbacks just got absolutely slobber knocked, and it was an easy call of targeting, I thought, and that's what the flag was. He fumbled. Idaho State recovered. Then, for some reason, I guess because he got hit with the shoulder, not helmet to helmet, they picked up the targeting flag. ISU kept ball, scored, and really made a difference in the game. They hit a field goal to walk it off, but without that touchdown, thanks to a targeting call that wasn't called or uncalled, reverse called, they won the game. And again, big yards. I know they lost the quarterback, but Richie Watts came in as a running quarterback and ran from 116. He had a kind of a play at the end where he actually faded back to pass on fourth down and then ended up short. That was an odd play on Cal Poly's part. That's what kind of goes back to what I said about Portland State, just making that one more play. And Idaho State just throwing the ball over the place. That Weimer receiver at 236 receiving. Shades of Tremel Taylor of Nevada Reno back in the day. Just the footballs are flying all around.
Yeah, I feel like this was probably one of the better games this week that very few people were watching. It wasn't top of the Big Sky, but it was
7 lead changes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean neither team took a lead more than 4 in the second half. Idaho State was up 10 in the first half, but Cal Poly scored 14 straight from that point on. So I mean both teams came out there and punched each other, and Idaho State's got to take great solace. That was their first win down in San Luis Obispo since 2003. So just getting that win, kind of ending that losing streak on the road down there is a big thing. And Cal Poly took some of that momentum that they got from their first D1 win against Northern Colorado last week and put it to good use. I think they should be very encouraged also by the result, knowing that they can hang in with some of the conference members.
Yeah, Fritz, I like that you brought up that targeting call, because that was definitely not the only targeting controversy over the weekend. If anyone caught that Cal-Miami game, crazy game, one of the craziest games I've ever seen, but a very controversial no call in that one as well. But moving on to Idaho now, they had another great win over NAU, with Montana kind of slipping and their defense showing a lot of holes. Is Idaho the biggest state to Montana State in this conference, Ian?
We'll find out Saturday.
Yeah.
I think Idaho's schedule definitely opens up a bit after this weekend, but still got to go into Bozeman and get a win there. That's going to be challenging for the Vandals. And it's going to be hard for them to compete for the top of the Big Sky with 2 losses if they do end up losing this weekend. So for that, I'm still going to side with Montana, even given their defensive problems. I know they obviously have suffered a Big Sky loss last week, but just because I don't think Idaho can go into Bozeman and get the win, I'm going to side more with Montana and still kind of being in that maybe number 2 spot for now. But I mean, yeah, we'll find out Saturday.
I've seen Idaho play pretty well on the road. We all have seen them play really good on the road this year. But I just think that, I think they're the main threat to MSU. I think Montana's probably got some work to do. I mean, we'll find out more as the season goes on with them. I am encouraged for Idaho because Keyshawn James Newby is back, and he's a guy that made a pretty big play. He sacked the quarterback and knocked him out of the game against NAU, and their backup quarterback threw for 83 yards after that. So that's one thing that stuck out for me is Idaho was banged up last week. This week they got the top D end and the Big Sky back and made a difference.
Yeah, I felt like Idaho might have been trying to get revenge for all the quarterback troubles that they've had with injuries this year against NAU last week. But I feel like right now I have to put Idaho on that level with Montana State. I mean, I know we'll see this weekend exactly what it shows. The loss to UC Davis is tough, but like we've mentioned multiple times on this podcast, it's hard to win on the road anywhere in this conference. So, I mean, they kept it within 2 in that game. I think that it's a national television audience this weekend. It's going to be, one of the best atmospheres we'll see in the Big Sky. It's going to show a lot from both teams, but it's also going to be one of those games where you could kind of put it on level to a deep playoff game. come late December. So, but yeah, Montana's got a lot of questions to answer at this moment, defensively especially. And for that reason alone, I think I have to put Idaho above them.
Yeah, I think you might even want to throw Weber State into the conversation a little bit, mostly because their schedule is pretty easy the last 6 weeks comparatively. Montana State's played a pretty soft schedule to begin with, and now they're playing a lot of their tough games. Now they got Idaho, and then they get to go to that tough place to win in Hillsboro, and then they got to go to Eastern, and you can ask the Grizz how much fun they had there. And then they got Sac State at home. Then they go to UC Davis, and then that Cat Grizz game. You hear people in Montana talk a lot about. So I would say all four of them. I mean, I guess if you had to rank them, probably I'd still say Idaho. Montana could still do it. They might have to outscore their basketball team the rest of the way to stay in the hunt, though. But we'll like Ian said, we'll find out Saturday. When Idaho goes over there to play Montana State.
Yeah, so it seems like people are not losing faith on the Grizz just yet. They have a high-powered offense. There's no question about that. Doesn't seem like a lot of people are convinced by UC Davis, though. I mean, they're 5-1, 2-0 in conference play, but maybe that's just the schedule they're playing, and they haven't had too many impressive wins. They've all been kind of close. But that's going to wrap up this week's episode of the Big Sky Now podcast. Join us this Thursday. We'll go over week 3 of the Big Sky Conference. A lot of big games, including that Idaho-Montana State game. Could be a battle to see who is the top of this conference. So join us then. Thank you for tuning in this week. I've been your host, Josh Amick. Thank you to my panel, and we'll see you Thursday.